He was driving to marry someone else. She was waiting for a bus with 3 children who had his eyes. 5 years ago, they said goodbye forever. But she was already carrying the secret that would shatter everything he thought he knew. What happens when the past you buried alive shows up at a bus stop? With your face staring back at you 3 times over? This is the story of a billionaire who built an empire on control. And the woman who just reminded him that some things can't be controlled. Some loves don't ask for permission. Some truths don't wait for the right time. And some goodbyes were never meant to be final. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support keeps these love stories alive. Hit that subscribe button, and let's build this community together. The bus stop shouldn't have registered. It was ordinary. A glass shelter on a busy corner. Advertisements for products he'd never use. A bench occupied by people waiting to go places he'd never need to go. His world and theirs didn't intersect. They existed in parallel universes that occasionally shared the same geography, but never the same gravity. Except, she was there. Amara. The name arrived in his consciousness like a blade, sharp and sudden and absolutely certain. 5 years collapsed into nothing. 5 years of careful forgetting, of strategic burial, of building walls so high that memory couldn't possibly climb them. All of it useless in the space of a single heartbeat. She stood at the edge of the shelter, one hand shading her eyes from the sun, the other holding. His breath stopped. 3 children, small, 4 years old maybe, wearing matching backpacks, holding hands in a chain. A girl with beads woven into her braids. A boy with his jacket zipped to his chin. Another boy with untied shoelaces and dirt on his knees. The car slowed for a red light. Daehyun's hand moved to the door handle before his mind caught up. The children turned as someone called to them. Probably Amara, though he couldn't hear through the glass, and he saw their faces. His face. 3 versions of it. Smaller, softer. But unmistakable. The shape of the eyes. The way they tilted just slightly at the corners. The serious set of their mouths even when they smiled. His genetics written in triplicate. Impossible to deny. Impossible to unsee. The light changed. The driver pulled forward. "Stop," Daehyun said. His voice came out strange, distant. "Sir?" "Stop the car." They were already half a block past the bus stop. The driver pulled to the curb, smooth and efficient, asking no questions. Daehyun sat frozen, his hand still on the door handle, his entire body a civil war. Behind them, a bus pulled up to the stop. He watched in the side mirror as Amara gathered the children, as they climbed the steps, as the doors closed. The bus merged into traffic and disappeared. She hadn't seen him. She had no idea he'd been there. But he had seen them. Seen the truth she'd kept from him. Seen the children who shared his face, his blood, his... "Sir?" The driver's voice was careful. "The venue is 30 minutes away. We should..." "I know." Daehyun released the door handle. His hand was shaking. He pressed it flat against his thigh until it stopped. "Drive." The car moved forward. The city continued its rhythm around him, utterly unchanged. But inside his chest, something had cracked. Not broken. Not yet. Just cracked. A thin fracture in the architecture he'd built so carefully around himself. He was supposed to get married in 3 hours. He had children. 3 of them. Children he'd never met, never known about, never held. Amara had been pregnant when she left. The implications cascaded through him, each one colder than the last. 5 years ago, they'd stood in the rain outside her apartment. His family had made their position clear. His father had delivered the ultimatum with surgical precision, and Amara had looked at him with eyes that held everything they'd never get to be. And she'd said, "Go build your empire. I won't be the thing you resent." He'd let her walk away. Told himself it was mercy. Told himself she deserved someone who could choose her freely, without the weight of a dynasty on his shoulders. She'd been carrying his children, and she'd let him go anyway. Daehyun closed his eyes. The perfect morning dissolved into something else, something that tasted like ash and felt like falling. His phone was still off. The wedding waited. His bride waited. 500 guests waited. Photographers and florists and a string quartet waited. His family's expectations, his carefully constructed future, The next logical chapter of his precisely planned life, all of it waited. But in his mind, he was still at that bus stop, still watching 3 small faces that looked like his, still trying to understand how someone could keep a secret, that enormous, that world-shattering, that... His phone buzzed. He'd turned it back on without realizing. Messages flooded in. His best man, his mother, the wedding coordinator, each one a small weight added to the pile. He answered none of them. The car drove toward the venue, toward the future that had been decided, toward the woman who wasn't Amara, toward the life that made sense, toward everything he was supposed to want. And with every mile, the crack in his chest widened. The venue glittered like a threat. Dae-hyun stood in the groom's suite, surrounded by men in expensive suits who spoke too loudly and smiled too easily. His best man, Jae, who'd known him since university, poured whiskey into crystal glasses and made jokes about ball and chains that landed like stones in water. The others laughed. Dae-hyun adjusted his tie in the mirror and saw a stranger looking back. "You're quiet," Jae observed, pressing a glass into his hand. "Cold feet?" No. The lie was smooth. He'd had years of practice. "Good, because Minseo looks incredible. Saw her earlier. The dress is insane." Jae grinned. "You're a lucky bastard." Dae-hyun drank the whiskey. It burned going down, but changed nothing. Through the window he could see the courtyard where chairs sat in perfect rows, where flowers bloomed in arrangements that cost more than most people's cars, where in less than an hour he would stand and make promises. Permanent ones. Binding ones. 3 children. Matching backpacks. His eyes looking back at him. "I need air," he said. He walked out before anyone could follow. The gardens behind the venue sprawled in manicured perfection. Roses that would never dare wilt, pathways that led nowhere important, benches positioned for maximum aesthetic impact. He found himself on one, elbows on his knees, head in his hands, breathing like he'd run a marathon. What was he doing? The question arrived without permission. He'd spent 5 years not asking it. 5 years moving forward with absolute certainty, building his empire, honoring his family, becoming the man his father had demanded he become. He'd buried Amara so deep he almost believed she'd never existed. Almost. Dae-hyun. He looked up. His mother stood on the pathway, elegant in silk, her expression unreadable. She'd mastered that look decades ago, the one that revealed nothing but saw everything. "You shouldn't be out here," she said. Not unkind, just factual. "I know." She sat beside him, which surprised him. His mother didn't sit on garden benches. She presided over rooms, commanded attention, moved through the world like royalty. But here she was, smoothing her dress, looking at the roses like they held answers. "Your father was late to our wedding," she said finally. 40 minutes. Everyone panicked. Thought he'd run. A small smile. He was sitting in his car, trying to convince himself he was ready. Dae-hyun said nothing. "Marriage is a partnership," she continued. "Not a fairy tale. Minseo understands that. She knows what this life requires. She won't ask you for things you can't give. What if I want to give them?" His mother turned to look at him. "Really look. Then you're thinking of the wrong woman." The words hung between them. Not cruel, just honest. "I saw someone today," Dae-hyun heard himself say. "Someone I used to know. The girl from before." Not a question. He shouldn't have been surprised his mother knew. She knew everything. Had probably known about Amara from the beginning. Had probably orchestrated the separation with the same precision she applied to everything else. She had children with her, he continued. His voice sounded far away. 3 of them. They looked... He stopped. Couldn't finish. His mother's expression didn't change. "I see. Did you know?" "No." Simple, direct. But I'm not surprised she moved on. People do. They build new lives. "They were mine." The words came out sharper than he intended. His mother absorbed them without flinching. "Were they?" she asked quietly. "Or did you see children who resembled you and build a story around it?" She stood, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her dress. "You have a choice to make, Dae-hyun. The life you've built, the commitments you've made, the family that depends on you, or a fantasy based on a glimpse at a bus stop. She walked away, leaving him alone with the roses and the truth. He sat there as minutes became an hour. His phone vibrated constantly. Ignored. The wedding was supposed to start. People were waiting. His bride was waiting. And somewhere in the city, Amara was living a life he knew nothing about. Raising children who might be his. Building a world that didn't include him. She'd had 5 years to tell him. 5 years to pick up the phone, send a message, knock on his office door. She'd chosen silence. Or maybe she'd chosen protection. For them. For herself. Dae-hyun stood, straightened his jacket, walked back toward the venue. But he didn't go inside. He went to his car instead. "Find someone for me," he told his driver, pulling out his phone. "I'll send you the details. Because some cracks don't heal. They widen. And eventually, everything built on top of them collapses." He just needed to know if the foundation had ever been real. The apartment complex was nothing like his world. Small buildings clustered together, paint peeling in places, children's toys scattered in the courtyard. A playground with a rusted swing set. Laundry hanging from balconies. Real life, messy and loud and utterly foreign to everything Dae-hyun had known for the past 5 years. His driver had found her in 3 hours. Money and connections could locate anyone, it turned out. Amara Okonkwo, Unit 4B, single mother. Worked 2 jobs, morning shift at a cafe, evening shifts as a translator. 3 children, Zuri, Kai, and Taj, 4 years old. No father listed on any documents. Dae-hyun sat in his car across the street as the sun set, watching the windows. Light glowed from the 4th floor. Shadows moved behind curtains. He'd been there for an hour, unable to move, unable to leave. His phone had gone nuclear. 63 missed calls. 48 messages. His mother, his father, Jay. Min-seo herself. Her texts progressing from concerned to confused to coldly formal. The wedding had been postponed. Indefinitely. The guests sent home. The society pages would have a field day. He'd destroyed everything in a single afternoon. For what? A glimpse at a bus stop? A possibility? No. For the truth. The apartment door opened. Amara emerged, carrying a bag of trash, wearing jeans and a faded sweater. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, exhausted in the way only parents of young children understood. She looked nothing like the girl he'd known 5 years ago. That girl had been softer, lighter, full of dreams about art and travel and futures that seemed possible. This woman looked like someone who'd learned to survive. She walked to the dumpster, tossed the bag, turned back, and froze. She'd seen the car, seen him. Even through the tinted windows, even in the fading light, she knew. Her body went rigid, her hand clutching the keys like a weapon. Dae-hyun got out. They stood on opposite sides of the street, traffic passing between them, the distance suddenly infinite. "Amara," he said. Her name felt like breaking glass. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at him like he was a ghost, like he couldn't possibly be real, like 5 years should have been enough to keep the dead buried. "I need to talk to you," he continued. "No." Her voice carried across the space, firm, final. "Please. Go home, Dae-hyun. Go back to your wedding, your perfect life. Whatever this is." She gestured at him, at the car, at the impossible fact of his presence. "It's not welcome here." "I saw them," he said. "This morning, at the bus stop." The color drained from her face. She knew exactly what he meant. "I saw them," he repeated, quieter now. "And I saw you. And I need to know—" "No." She was already backing toward the building. "You don't get to do this. Not now. Not after—" Her voice cracked. She swallowed it down. "You made your choice 5 years ago. You never told me." The accusation hung between them. Amara stopped moving. Her eyes went hard. "Told you what, exactly? That I was pregnant? That I was carrying 3 babies I had no idea how to afford? That the man I loved chose his family's approval over me?" She laughed, bitter and sharp. "What would that have changed, Dae-hyun? Would you have married me? Stood up to your father? Walked away from everything?" He had no answer. They both knew it. "That's what I thought," she said softly. "So I made it easy for you. I disappeared. I built a life. I kept them safe. From me? From your world." She met his eyes. From the people who would see them as mistakes. Complications. Problems to be managed. Her voice wavered. "I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't." A window opened above them. A small face appeared. One of the boys, Dae-hyun realized. Kai or Taj, he didn't know which. "Mama?" The child called down. "You coming back?" "1 minute, baby," Amara called up, her voice transforming into something warm and gentle. The window closed. When she looked back at Dae-hyun, the gentleness was gone. "You need to leave," she said. "Right now. Before they see you, before they ask questions I can't answer. I have a right." "You have nothing." The words were surgical. Precise. "You weren't there. You didn't earn rights. You were building your empire while I was learning how to feed 3 infants on minimum wage. While I was walking the floor at 3 a.m. with babies who wouldn't stop crying. While I was choosing between electricity and groceries." Her breath shook. "So no. You don't get to show up now and claim anything." Dae-hyun felt something crack wider in his chest. She was right, about all of it. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "You have to believe that. I would have..." "What? Helped? Sent money? Set up a trust fund?" Amara's smile was sad. "Maybe. Probably. But you wouldn't have stayed. You wouldn't have been their father. Not really. Not when it mattered." She turned toward the building. "Amara, wait." "Goodbye, Dae-hyun." She didn't look back. "Go marry your bride. Live your life. Forget you saw us." She disappeared into the building. The door closed with a sound like finality. Dae-hyun stood alone in the street as night fell around him. Above, in the lit window, 3 small shadows moved behind curtains. His children, living in a world he'd never been part of, loved by a woman who'd learned to do it alone. His phone buzzed. His father, demanding answers. Demanding he fix this. Demanding he return to the life that made sense. But Dae-hyun couldn't move. Couldn't leave. Could only stand there staring at that window, at the life he'd lost without ever knowing it existed. Some lines, once crossed, redrew the entire map. He was standing on the other side now, and there was no going back. The days that followed felt like living underwater. Everything muffled. Distorted. Dae-hyun moved through his penthouse like a ghost haunting his own life. Unable to sleep. Unable to think about anything except 3 small faces and a woman who'd looked at him like he was poison. The scandal had erupted exactly as expected. Headlines screamed about the runaway groom, the abandoned bride, the Song family's humiliation. Min Seo had released a statement, dignified, brief, devastating in its politeness. She wished him well. She hoped he found what he was looking for. The subtext was clear. He'd thrown away something irreplaceable for nothing. His father hadn't called. That was worse than any conversation could have been. Dae-hyun stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city glitter 40 stories below. Somewhere down there, in an apartment that probably cost less than his monthly car payment, Amara was putting 3 children to bed, reading them stories, kissing their foreheads, living a life he had no access to, no right to, no place in. His phone rang. Jay. Again. He'd been calling every day, leaving increasingly concerned messages. Dae-hyun let it go to voicemail. But then a text arrived. "I know where you went. I know what you're doing. Stop torturing yourself and talk to me." Dae-hyun stared at the message. Then, for the first time in 3 days, he replied, "Come over." Jay arrived within the hour, letting himself in with the spare key Dae-hyun had given him years ago. He took one look at his friend, unshaven, still in yesterday's clothes, surrounded by empty coffee cups, and went straight to the kitchen. "When did you last eat?" he called out. "I don't know. Yesterday? That's not eating. That's starving slowly." Jay returned with water and what looked like leftover takeout. "Eat. Then talk." Dae-hyun ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Jay watched him with the kind of patience that came from a decade of friendship, from knowing when to push and when to wait. Her name is Amara, Dae-hyun said finally. We were together 5 years ago, before the company merger, before my father made it clear what my life was supposed to look like. And the children? Mine, I think. I'm almost certain. He set down the fork. Triplets, 4 years old. I saw them at a bus stop on the way to the wedding. Saw her. And I couldn't pretend anymore. Jay was quiet for a long moment. Did you ask her? Confirm it? She wouldn't talk to me, told me I had no rights, that I wasn't there when it mattered. Dae-hyun's voice cracked. She's right, Jay. I wasn't. I let her go. I chose the easy path. You chose the path you were raised to choose, Jay corrected gently. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like cowardice either way. Jay leaned back, studying his friend. What do you want? Really want? Not what your family expects, not what makes sense on paper. What does your gut tell you? Dae-hyun closed his eyes. The answer was immediate, certain, terrifying. I want to know them, the children. I want to be their father if they'll let me. And Amara. He stopped, swallowed. I never stopped thinking about her, not once in 5 years. I just got really good at pretending I had. Then fight for it. She won't let me near them. So prove you're worth letting near. Jay stood, heading for the door. You built $1 billion empire from nothing. You can figure out how to show one woman that you've changed, that you're serious, that you're not running this time. After Jay left, Dae-hyun sat in the silence of his penthouse. His entire life had been about control. About planning. About making strategic decisions that benefited the company, the family, the legacy. But love wasn't strategic. Fatherhood wasn't something you could plan into quarterly projections. He pulled out his phone and made a call. I need a lawyer, he said when the line connected. Family law. The best you have. Because if Amara wouldn't talk to him, maybe the law would force her hand. Maybe a paternity test would prove what he already knew. Maybe legal rights would give him access to his children. He ended the call feeling sick. That wasn't the answer. That wasn't how you built trust. That was how you became exactly what Amara feared. A man who used power to get what he wanted. Consequences be damned. Dae-hyun deleted the lawyer's number from his phone. Then he opened a different app. Started typing. Not a legal demand. Not a threat. Just a message. Simple. Honest. I know I have no right to ask. But please let me prove I can do better. Let me try. He stared at it for 20 minutes before hitting send. The reply came 3 hours later. Just 2 words. Prove it. The cafe where Amara worked the morning shift was small. Tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore. The kind of place that survived on regulars and locals, where the coffee was good and the atmosphere was worn and comfortable. Dae-hyun had been watching it for 2 days before he finally walked inside. She was behind the counter, hair pulled back in a bun, apron stained with espresso and milk foam, moving with the efficient grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. She was laughing at something a coworker said, her smile genuine and unguarded in a way he'd almost forgotten. Then she saw him. The smile died. Her entire body went rigid. The coworker noticed, followed her gaze, and Dae-hyun saw the moment the young man decided he was a threat. He stepped slightly in front of Amara, protective. Can I help you? The coworker asked. Polite, firm. I just want coffee, Dae-hyun said. And maybe a minute of Amara's time, if she's willing. Amara didn't move, didn't speak. Just stared at him with eyes that held everything she wasn't saying. I'm on break in 10 minutes, she said finally. Her voice was careful, controlled. You can wait. He waited. The cafe was busy. Morning rush. People grabbing coffee before work. Students camping out with laptops. Dae-hyun sat in a corner booth, out of place in his tailored suit, drawing looks from customers who clearly recognized him. The scandalous CEO. The man who'd abandoned his bride. He ignored them all. When Amara finally slid into the seat across from him, she'd removed her apron, but kept her armor firmly in place. Shoulders back, jaw set. Ready for battle. You have 5 minutes, she said. I don't want to fight you, Dae-hyun began. I don't want to take them from you. I want to know them. Be part of their lives. However that looks. Why now? Why after 5 years? Because I didn't know. If I had... You would have what? Married me? Defied your family? Amara's laugh was bitter. We both know how that story ends, Daehyun. I would have been the woman who trapped you. The children would have been obligations, burdens. And eventually, you would have resented all of us. You don't know that, don't I? She leaned forward. Your mother made it very clear what your family thought of me. What they'd think of any children we had. Half Korean wasn't pure enough. Half African was scandalous. They had your entire life mapped out, and I wasn't on the map. Daehyun felt the words like blows. That was 5 years ago. I'm not the same person. Aren't you? Because from where I'm sitting, you look exactly the same. Same suits. Same cars. Same world. Her eyes were hard. The only difference is now you know about them. Now they're real to you. But they've been real to me since the moment I found out I was pregnant. I want to help. Financially. Whatever you need. I don't want your money. The words were sharp, final. We've managed without it. We'll keep managing. Amara. They ask about their father sometimes, she said quietly. The shift in tone stopped him cold. Zuri especially. She sees other kids with dads and she wants to know where hers is. And I tell her that some families look different. That love doesn't always come in the same package. Her voice wavered. What am I supposed to tell her now? That her father is a billionaire who didn't know she existed? That he could have given her everything but wasn't there for anything? The question hung between them, unanswerable. Let me meet them, Daehyun said. Just once. Let me see them. Talk to them. And then we can figure out what comes next. Amara was silent for a long moment. He watched the war play out across her face. Protection versus possibility. Fear versus fairness. One meeting, she said finally. Supervised, at the park, this Saturday, 2 hours. She stood. But Daehyun, if you hurt them, if you disappoint them, if you show up and then disappear again, I will make sure you never get another chance. She walked away before he could respond. Daehyun sat alone in the cafe, hands shaking around his untouched coffee. Saturday, 3 days away. 3 days to prepare for a meeting that could change everything. 3 days to figure out how to be a father to children who didn't know his name. He left the cafe and walked to a toy store 2 blocks away. Stood in the aisles surrounded by bright colors and endless options. Utterly lost. What did 4-year-olds like? What would make them smile? What could possibly make up for 4 years of absence? Nothing. The answer was nothing. But he bought gifts anyway. Books and puzzles and stuffed animals. Filled his car with things that felt inadequate and desperate and necessary. Because showing up empty-handed felt like showing up empty-hearted. That night, he called his mother. I'm meeting my children on Saturday, he said when she answered. The silence on the other end was long. Heavy. Daehyun, I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you, they exist. They're mine, and I'm going to be in their lives. Your father won't accept this. Then he'll have to learn. Daehyun's voice was steady. Sure. I've spent 5 years living his version of my life, making decisions that made sense for everyone except me. I'm done. You'll lose everything. Maybe. Or maybe I'll finally have something worth keeping. He hung up before she could respond. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. The park was ordinary. Playground equipment that had seen better days. Grass worn thin in patches. Families scattered across picnic blankets enjoying the mild weather. Daehyun arrived early, heart hammering, palms sweating in a way boardroom presentations had never managed. He sat on a bench near the swings, watching parents push their children, listening to laughter that felt like a language he'd never learned to speak. His hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against his thighs, trying to steady the earthquake happening inside his chest. What if they hated him? What if they saw through him immediately, recognized him as the absence in their lives shaped like a man? What if Zuri's questions were too hard, Kai's curiosity too pointed, Taj's silence too knowing? What if he failed before he even began? He saw them before they saw him. Amara walked toward the playground, holding hands with all 3 children. Zuri in the middle, the boys on either side. They were wearing matching jackets in different colors: pink, blue, green, their backpacks bouncing as they skipped and chattered. Real, solid, undeniably his. The resemblance stole his breath all over again. The way Kai tilted his head when he listened. The serious set of Taj's mouth. Zuri's eyes, bright and questioning and fierce. All of them carrying pieces of him in their faces, in their gestures, in the invisible architecture of their DNA. Zuri spotted him first. She stopped walking, which made the boys stumble. "Mama, who's that man?" Her voice carried across the playground, clear, unafraid, curious. Amara knelt down to their level, her back to Dae-hyun. He couldn't hear what she said, but he saw the children's faces change, wariness melting into curiosity. Zuri whispered something. Kai tugged on Amara's sleeve. Taj just stared, solemn and unblinking. Amara nodded, stood, led them forward. They stopped a few feet away, 3 small faces looking up at him with eyes that were mirror images of his own. Dae-hyun stood, suddenly aware of how tall he was, how imposing he must look to children so small. He wanted to kneel, to make himself less threatening, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. "This is Dae-hyun," Amara said softly. Her voice was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. He's someone who wants to meet you. Is that okay?" Zuri studied him with an intensity that was startling. Her gaze traveled from his shoes to his face, cataloging every detail. "Are you our daddy?" The question landed like an earthquake, direct, innocent, world-shattering. Dae-hyun looked at Amara. She nodded almost imperceptibly, her expression unreadable. Permission. Or maybe just acknowledgement that the truth couldn't be avoided forever. "Yes," he said. His voice came out rough, scraped raw by emotion. "I am. Where were you?" This from Kai, matter of fact and devastating in its simplicity. The question every child had a right to ask. The question he'd been dreading. The question that had no good answer. "I didn't know about you," Dae-hyun said honestly. He wouldn't lie to them. Not now. Not ever. "But I'm here now. If that's okay with you." Taj said nothing, just stared at him with solemn eyes that seemed far too old for a 4-year-old, processing everything in that quiet way of his. Zuri stepped forward, bold, fearless, a tiny warrior in a pink jacket. "Did you bring presents?" Despite everything, the weight of the moment, the enormity of what was happening, Dae-hyun smiled. "I did. They're in my car. But maybe we could talk first, get to know each other." "Okay." Zuri grabbed his hand without hesitation. Her palm was small and warm and impossibly trusting. "Come push me on the swings." And just like that, the ice broke. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of motion and sound and unexpected joy. Swings that went higher and higher until Zuri shrieked with delight. Slides that Kai insisted on going down backward. A sandbox where Taj built elaborate castles with careful, precise movements that reminded Dae-hyun of himself at that age. Kai was a tornado of questions. "What's your favorite color? Do you like dinosaurs? Can you do a cartwheel? Do you have a dog? Why don't you have a dog? Everyone should have a dog. Mama says we can't have a dog because our apartment is too small. Is your house big enough for a dog?" Dae-hyun answered each question patiently, thoroughly, finding himself charmed by the boy's relentless curiosity. Blue. Yes. No. But he could try. No dog. But he'd never really thought about it. Maybe his house was big enough. Maybe a lot of things were possible now that hadn't been before. Zuri narrated everything. "See that tree? That's where the squirrels live. They're mean squirrels. They stole Kai's sandwich once. And that's the good slide, not the scary one. The scary one is too fast. Taj likes the scary one, but I think he's just being brave." "Are you brave?" "I'm trying to be," Dae-hyun said quietly. Taj observed more than he participated. He stayed close but didn't speak, his dark eyes watching everything, measuring, calculating. At one point, while building a sandcastle, he looked up at Dae-hyun and said simply, "You look like me." 4 words. But they carried the weight of recognition, of acceptance, of a truth that couldn't be denied. I do, Daehyun agreed, his throat tight. We look like each other. Taj nodded, satisfied, and went back to his castle. Amara watched from a bench beneath a large oak tree, never far, never interfering. Just present, vigilant, making sure they were safe. Daehyun caught her eye once and saw something complicated in her expression. Relief mixed with fear, hope tangled with caution. She was letting him in, but only so far. Only as much as she deemed safe. He understood. He'd have to earn the rest. At one point, as Daehyun was building a sandcastle with Taj, carefully following the boy's precise instructions about where the towers should go, Kai appeared at his elbow. "Do you live in a big house?" he asked. "I do," Daehyun admitted, wondering where this was going. "Bigger than Mama's? Much bigger." Kai considered this with the seriousness of a judge. "Can we visit?" The hope in his voice was almost painful. Innocent. Pure. The kind of hope that could be crushed so easily by adult complications. Daehyun glanced at Amara. She was already shaking her head slightly, her expression firm. Not yet. Maybe never. He understood that too. "Maybe someday," Daehyun said carefully, choosing his words like stepping stones across a river. "If your mama says it's okay." "Mama says okay to lots of things," Zuri piped up, appearing out of nowhere with that uncanny timing children had. "She's the best mama in the whole world." "She is," Daehyun agreed quietly. He meant it with every fiber of his being. The 2 hours passed too quickly. When Amara called that it was time to go, the children groaned in protest. Zuri hugged his leg, her small arms surprisingly strong. Kai asked when they could see him again, his face so hopeful it hurt to look at. Even Taj, quiet Taj, waved goodbye with something that might have been a smile. "Can we come back tomorrow?" Zuri asked, still clinging to Daehyun's leg. "Not tomorrow, baby," Amara said gently, pulling her daughter away with practiced ease. "But soon." "How soon?" "We'll see." They left in a chorus of goodbyes and waves, Zuri looking back over her shoulder until they disappeared around a corner. And then Daehyun was alone, standing in a sandbox surrounded by half-built castles and the lingering warmth of small hands in his. He sat on the bench Amara had occupied, his entire body trembling with the aftershock of emotion. His phone buzzed. His father, finally calling after days of silence. Demanding explanations. Demanding he fix the mess he'd made. Demanding he return to the fold and stop this ridiculous detour into sentimentality. Daehyun silenced it without looking at the message. Some things were more important than empires built on other people's expectations. Over the next weeks, Saturday became sacred. 2 hours. Always supervised. Always in public places. The park, the zoo, the children's museum, the aquarium. Slow. Careful. Building trust one moment at a time. One shared experience at a time. The children started calling him Day. Not Dad, not Daddy. Just Day. It wasn't what he'd hoped for, but it was progress. It was acknowledgement. It was a beginning. He learned their rhythms. Zuri was the brave one, fearless and bossy and full of opinions about everything. Kai was the curious one, asking endless questions about the world, wanting to understand how everything worked. Taj was the quiet one, thoughtful and observant, speaking only when he had something important to say. They were so different from each other, these 3 humans who'd shared the same womb. But they were united in their love for Amara, in their protective instinct toward each other, in the way they moved through the world as a unit. Daehyun fell in love with them completely, helplessly, in a way that had nothing to do with biology and everything to do with who they were. These small, fierce, brilliant people who existed because of a love he'd once thought wasn't strong enough to survive. Amara remained distant, polite, protective. They didn't talk about the past, didn't discuss the future, didn't acknowledge the elephant that followed them everywhere. The question of what came next, of whether this fragile bridge they were building could support the weight of everything unspoken. They focused on the present, on what the children needed, on what they were ready for. But sometimes, when Zuri said something particularly funny, or Kai asked an impossibly profound question, or Taj climbed into Daehyun's lap during story time at the library, Amara would smile. Small, soft, almost involuntary. A crack in the armor she wore so carefully. And in those moments, Daehyun would see her. Not the exhausted single mother. Not the woman who'd learned to survive alone. But the girl he'd fallen in love with 5 years ago. The one who'd believed in impossible things. Who'd looked at him like he could be more than his family's expectations. Who'd made him feel alive in a way nothing else ever had. She was still there, still fighting, still hoping despite everything. One Saturday, after the children had been picked up by Amara's sister for a play date, Daehyun and Amara stood alone in the park as dusk settled around them. Awkward, uncertain. Two people who'd once known each other intimately, now strangers navigating new territory. "Thank you," Daehyun said finally, breaking the silence that had stretched too long. "For letting me in, for giving me a chance I didn't earn, for not shutting the door completely." Amara looked at him. Really looked. Not the guarded glances she usually gave him, but a real look that searched his face for truth. "You're good with them," she said quietly. "Better than I expected. Better than I wanted to admit. They're incredible. You've done an amazing job raising them. I had to. Simple, true. No pride in it, just fact. There was no other option. There is now." The words came out before he could stop them, urgent and raw. "Let me help. Not with money, I know you don't want that. But with time, with presence, with what, Daehyun? Co-parenting? Shared custody?" Her laugh was soft, sad, edged with disbelief. "You live in a different world. A world that doesn't have space for us. For children who don't fit the mold. For a woman who... Then I'll make space." He stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes, close enough to smell the faint scent of her shampoo. "I'll build a new world. One where they fit. Where you fit. Where we all fit." Amara shook her head, but there was less certainty in the gesture than before. "You can't just rebuild your entire life. Watch me." His voice was quiet but certain, carrying a conviction he'd never felt in any boardroom. "I've spent 5 years building an empire I don't care about. For people who'll never be satisfied. For a legacy that means nothing without..." He stopped, steadied himself. "I want to build something different now. Something that matters. Something real." She studied him in the fading light, searching for cracks, for lies, for the inevitable moment when reality would reassert itself and he'd realize what he was giving up. "This isn't a K-drama, Daehyun. You can't just sacrifice everything for love and expect a happy ending. Life doesn't work that way. Your family won't accept this. Your father will disinherit you. Your company will... I don't care." And he meant it. For the first time in his life, he genuinely didn't care about the empire, the inheritance, the carefully constructed future that had been mapped out since birth. "Let them take it all. Let my father give everything to someone else. Let the board push me out. I'll start over. I'll build something new. Something mine. And when the novelty wears off, when being a father gets hard, when the sacrifice feels too big..." Her voice wavered, revealing the fear beneath the armor. "What then?" "Then I'll still be here." He held her gaze, willing her to believe him. "I'm not running this time, Amara. I can't. You've changed everything. I can't go back to who I was. I don't want to." Amara was quiet for a long time. Around them, the park emptied. Dusk deepened into twilight. The world continued its rotation, indifferent to two people standing at a crossroads that would determine the shape of multiple futures. "One day at a time," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's all I can promise. One day at a time. No guarantees, no fairy tale endings, just presence, consistency, proof. One day at a time," Daehyun agreed. It was enough. For now, it was enough. Amara turned to leave, then paused. Looked back at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Something between hope and heartbreak. Between opening and protecting. "They love you already, you know," she said softly. "Zuri told me last night that she's glad you came back. Kai asked if you'd teach him to tie his shoes, and Taj..." Her voice caught. Taj drew a picture of our family. And for the first time, there were 5 people in it, instead of 4. She walked away before he could respond, before the tears in her eyes could fall, before the walls she'd built could crumble completely. Daehyun stood alone in the darkening park, her words echoing in his chest. 5 people instead of 4, a family that included him. Children who were learning to love him not because of biology, but because he'd shown up, because he'd stayed, because he was trying. His phone buzzed again. His father, relentless in his demands. His mother, adding her pressure. Min Seo's lawyer, requesting a meeting about the broken engagement. The board, wanting explanations for his erratic behavior. The old world pulling at him with all its familiar gravity. But Daehyun looked at the playground, at the swings still swaying slightly in the evening breeze, at the sandbox where he'd built castles with his son, at the bench where his daughter had told him about mean squirrels. And he knew which world he was choosing. He walked back to his car, not to return to his penthouse, not to answer his family's demands, but to drive to a small apartment on the other side of the city, to sit in his car and watch the lights in a 4th-floor window, to see the shadows of his children moving behind curtains. To guard, from a distance, the family he was still learning to be part of. Because some empires were built with steel and ruthlessness, but the ones that mattered? Those were built with patience, presence, and the quiet revolution of showing up, day after day after day, until love became the only foundation worth building on.